What is your position on Afghanistan and its role in the war on terror, and what should the U.S. role there be?
This was near and dear to me. I have a brother who was serving in Afghanistan for most of last year. It's a very complex situation. You know, there's a lot of people who go back and forth on whether or not we should be there. I firmly believe we're there for a purpose, and I believe this is a training ground for Al-Qaeda and for fundamentalist terrorists. Now, I've read Stanley McChrystal's report, and he asked for 40,000 troops for a reason. It wasn't to just carpet bomb, it wasn't just root people out, but what he wanted to do was create more than just a military solution. Picture this. You're in a village, northern Afghanistan, sitting on rocks, you have nothing to eat, you've got a couple of kids, you've got no commerce because your poppy fields have been burned. The Taliban shows up. They've got guns. And you've heard about the atrocities they've committed, spraying acid in women's face when they try to go to school, or killing women who have been raped for being adulterous. And they say, you know what, you've got a son. Why don't we take him for you? We'll raise him. We'll feed him. We'll teach him in the ways of Allah. And in 5 years, you've got another jihadist who's ready to come to the United States or any one of our interests around the world and blow themselves up to get to the promised land. What we need to do is create, much like what we did in Iraq, is a safe haven where the citizens of Afghanistan can create their own form of government. Now, whether that's a tribal coalition, whether it's a democracy, whether it's a monarchy, we need to allow them to create stability themselves without the outside interference of these terrorist forces. To do that, we need strength and we need commitment. We don't need to go in there and say, well, our generals on the ground only asked for 40,000 troops, we're going to give them 30, and we're going to get them out in 18 months. The Taliban are going to lay low because they know we don't have the stomach to fight the war that we're in. And as soon as we're gone, they're going to come back. And the villagers know this. We will never win their hearts and minds unless they trust. In the history of the world, there are two armies, only two, that people have been unafraid to approach for help. And that is the United States and Great Britain. And we are the two primary carriers of justice in that region. We need to give our troops what they ask.
I had the opportunity to go to all of Mr. Himes' town halls. And in it, there was a question that kept on coming up at each one. People would ask, why are we over there? Well, I'll tell you why we're over there. We were struck on 9/11. This was not a war of choice. Afghanistan was harboring terrorists. The Taliban government said, no, we will not hand over these Al-Qaeda suspects to you, who we know struck the United States. What did we do? We rightly went in there and we removed them from power and we went after Al-Qaeda. Now, what happens if we decide, okay, you know what, it's a little tricky over there, it's pretty rough, let's come home? Do you think the terrorists over there are going to say, oh yeah, let's just play nice from now on? No, it's going to be a training ground for terrorists to strike us again. That is unacceptable. Now, there are a few other things that really complicate this situation, and one of them is the fact that we're not the only country over there. We went over there with a NATO force. Now, NATO, you guys know, the North Atlantic Treaty. There's a clause in the North Atlantic Treaty, Article 5. It says, if you strike one of us, you struck all of us. So that every country within the North Atlantic Treaty, every signatory, would have to come to the aid of the country that was attacked. We invoked that after 9/11. But our allies have not lived up to their obligation to go and support us. Now, Canada, the Netherlands have really stepped up in a big way, as have many countries. But we need to get others, like Germany, to contribute adequate forces. And we also need to make sure that they're not just going out just during the daytime and will come home as soon as dusk hits, which you can't make this stuff up, they've been doing. We need to make sure that Obama uses some of that political capital in the world that he talks so much about to ensure that we get them to contribute forces as well. I would fully support McChrystal's call for 40,000 troops, and we need to make sure that we are giving our troops every opportunity to have victory there, because that is exactly what we need, and we cannot stop short of victory.
Thank you.
We need Afghanistan because it's where the 9/11 attacks were planned. And since the day we invaded, Osama bin Laden has been on the run. We've seriously cut into his network, his planning ability, and his ability to put together another strike. If we leave today, they will grow back like weeds. We cannot leave Afghanistan until we're absolutely positive Osama bin Laden is either dead or captured, and his network and his allies will not return to rule that country through oppression.
Thank you. Next will be Rick Torres.
Afghanistan is a tough place. We had to go. And we acted in our own self-interest at that point, and we should have gone, and we should have tried as hard as we could to win that war. Nation building is not easy. We're not working with Americans that have been displaced in Afghanistan. They're quite different. There are cultural significances that are very, very difficult. We are looking at a very long stay there. It bothers me to the core every time I hear that one of our Humvees was blown up with improvised explosive device. It kills me. And it bothers me very much because the attacks are indiscriminate. And it has very little to do with the battle. We should chase Osama bin Laden into the depths of any cave that he is in. But it worries me that we're going to spend 20 years with our kids getting blown up on the streets of Afghanistan just because they are who they are, which is freedom-loving people. So I'm very, I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that I understand this point completely. I think it deserves good study. And what's imperative about it is that our children, many of them, the age of the children that I have, are losing their lives. So let's not take this so lightly. You know, if they insist on killing each other, that's one thing. But when we're sending our kids over there, we have to be very careful that we protect them. Iraq is another situation. I think Iraq is on its way, and it's going to finish. Afghanistan has very few natural resources. There's very little that that country can do for itself. And you also have to understand that the rest of the world pretty much is in the same condition, aside from small pockets of freedom throughout the world. So, you know, I would say to you right now that from the standpoint of Afghanistan is that I love a good problem, and I want to throw myself at it, but I want to make sure that we protect our kids in a way that's meaningful and that we're not seeing these body bags coming back for no good reason.
Thank you. Dandy Basel.
Well, first off, on a lighter note, the Jets are ahead 7-3. So a little bit of good news. On a more serious note, this is a serious topic. I support the President in saying we should be sending more troops there. If we're going to be in Afghanistan, we have to get the job done. I do not support the idea of telling them when we're going to leave. Even if you have a timeline in your head, you don't tell the enemy we're going to be there for 18 months and getting out. Because Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda is just going to hunt you down. Now, the issue that I have with what we're doing in Afghanistan is actually one that comes from a principle in business. In business, you try to have one objective and get everybody driving towards it. If you try to do 5 things at once, you'll end up not doing any of them very well. What are we doing in Afghanistan right now? Well, we're trying to support the Karzai government, which is really just in control of Kabul. We're trying to get the warlords who control most of the country to actually work with the government. We're trying to build infrastructure in terms of highways and roads. We're trying to get kids to go to school, and we're trying to track down terrorists. We're trying to do too much, and we're going to fail at it. We need to have one objective, and one objective only, is to catch and kill Al-Qaeda and the terrorists. We should be focusing our troops in the southeast region of Afghanistan, where Al-Qaeda is hiding, work with the Pakistanis, who are also after them because the Taliban and Al-Qaeda have been doing bombings in Pakistan. Catch them and kill them. Then when that is done, we can reevaluate and say, how can we help Afghanistan actually build a more stable society? How can we help them with infrastructure and education? But we can't do that, and we can't forget our primary mission, which is we are there to make sure that terrorists under Osama bin Laden are caught and brought to justice.
Thank you.